Hi everyone and welcome back to If you haven't watched the previous video about the present continuous, I recommend that you do that now before you continue this video, because I'm going to repeat some of the things which I mentioned in the previous video. Okay, so let's get started with the present simple. When do we use the present simple? Well, the present simple, we use it to talk about things in general. So the present simple is mostly used for the following situations. To say that something happens all the time, to say that something repeatedly happens, it repeats itself all the time, or to talk about something which is true in general. So here we're talking about a fact. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples. Doctors make people better. This is something which is true in general. I exercise every day. This is something which happens repeatedly every day. Fish live in the sea. This is a fact. Okay, it's something which is true. In England, it always rains. This is something which happens all the time. So, as you can see from the examples that I just mentioned, we do not use the present simple to talk about things happening now, okay? We use it to talk about facts, habits, and general truths, okay? So things that happen all the time, which are always true. All right, so let's have a look at how to use the present simple with the verb to live with the pronouns I, you, he, she, it, we, they. So the verb to live, it's I live, you live, he lives, she lives, it lives, we live, they live. As you can see, the verb only changes in the third person singular, where we put an S at the end. He lives, she lives. Can you hear that? You have to try to recognize that. You've got to try and practice that, pronouncing that S as much as possible. All the verbs follow the same rule, where we put the S in the third person singular. There's one exception, which is the verb to be. So let's have a look at the verb to be. I am, you are, he is, she is, it is, we are, they are. You can see here in this situation with the verb to be, the verb to be changes completely compared to its base forms. So compared to other verbs, it's completely different. Now let's have a look at using contractions with the verb to be. Okay, so if we use a contraction, it's the short form. So the contraction of the verb to be in the present simple is I'm, you're, he's, she's, it's, we're, there. Okay, let's listen one more time and I want you to practice at the same time. I'm, you're, he's, she's, it's, we're, there. Okay, so practice repeating those, saying those contractions a few times. Alright, so let's have a look at some examples of the present simple in affirmative sentences. Peter works in London. Peter works. Listen to the S at the end, okay? The children eat chocolate every day. The children eat chocolate every day. This is repeatedly happening. We go to the mall every weekend. The sky is blue. That's a fact. So remember to pronounce the S in the third person singular, okay? It's something small, but if we don't hear it, it does sound wrong. Now, if you forget to pronounce it, it's not a big problem. We still understand. It doesn't change the meaning of the sentence or anything, but if you want to practice and you want to sound more like a native speaker, then this is something which is quite important for you to practice. let's have a look at how to make negative sentences. We'll continue with the verb to live. Okay, so the verb to live in a negative sentence. I do not live. You do not live. He does not live. She does not live. It does not live. We do not live. They do not live. So, in the negative, we use the following structure. So the subject plus do or does plus not plus verb. Now, let's look at how to use negative sentences with the contractions, so the short form of the verb. I don't live. You don't live. He doesn't live. She doesn't live. It doesn't live. We don't live. They don't live. In everyday conversation, we always use contractions, and you must learn to use them. You must learn to recognize them, to hear them. Let's have a look at some examples using the present simple in negative sentences. My mother doesn't eat bread. My friends don't like classical music. I don't work in New York. Did you notice in the example where I used the third person singular, I added the S, okay? My mother doesn't, okay? Listen to that again and again, okay? So that your ear gets used to hearing it, okay? Okay, once again, we have an exception, and that is with the verb to be. In the negative, it's also different, okay? So, let's have a look at the verb to be in the negative. I am not. You are not. He is not. She is not. It is not. We are not. They are not. Okay. And here is the verb to be using contractions in the negative. I'm not. You're not. He isn't. She isn't. It isn't. They aren't. Alright, so let's now have a look at using the present simple in the negative, but let's look at some sentences. My friend isn't happy because I'm late. The students aren't English. I'm not hungry. You aren't good at football. Okay, great. You learned how to use the present simple in positive and negative sentences. Now we need to look at how to make questions in the present simple. So the structure to make questions in the present simple is do or does plus your subject plus your verb. Okay, so here are some examples. Do you live in London? Does your brother speak English? Do your children like pizza? Does Peter like watching movies? As you can see, we also use the S, okay, in the questions, so does. It's very important that you remember the does, okay? Once again, we have one exception, and that again is with the verb to be. Yeah, I know there's always small exceptions, but you need to learn them, and the more you practice, the easier it becomes. So to make questions in the present simple with the verb to be, we use the following structure. So here I'm going to give you some examples. Am I hungry? Are the children happy? Is your father good with computers? Are you tired? Is he okay? So there you go for today's lesson, which was about the present simple. I hope that you liked it. I hope that it helped you a lot. If you have any questions about today's lesson, the present simple, feel free to write a comment below. I'm happy to answer all the questions that you have about English grammar. So, have a great day everyone, and I will see you for next week's video.